Greetings. My name is Jalandra A. Davis, otherwise known as Mommy Melusine. I am a writer, scholar, educator, dancer, mermaid enthusiast, and all-around creative. Welcome to the Merwomanist podcast, where we talk about Black mermaid lore, fantasy, spirituality, and aquatic culture. Dive in and enjoy. Greetings and welcome back to the Merwomanist podcast with Mommy Melusine. And this is going to be a quick episode just to talk about my experience at MerMagic-Con last weekend. I just went to MerMagic-Con for the first time. It's the biggest mermaid convention that I know of. It's been going on for several years, and it's the one that I usually tend to see the most content and noise around this time of year. And I would say it probably is the official kickoff to mermaid season happening in spring. So I've been wanting to go to this one for a while, but I just haven't been able to make it. I'm pretty committed to Afro Mermaid every year. So that is an investment of resources to go back to that. And then California Mermaid Convention is in my state. So it's a bit easier for me to get to. So I was thinking about going this year. If you've been listening to my podcast, I am doing a research study on the Black mermaiding community, talking to Black mermaids about the ways in which they incorporate their culture, history, identity, experiences as Black people into their mermaiding practice. And I think everyone I interviewed at this point is someone who I met and recruited at Afro Mermaid. And I do think that primarily recruiting an Afro mermaid, I am more likely to draw mermaids that do have a very strong identity to their Blackness in the way that that Blackness shows up in their mermaiding. And that's great, but it makes me feel as if maybe my sample isn't representative of everyone, of all the Black mermaids in the community. So I've been wanting to go to another mermaid convention that isn't sort of organized around the affinity of Blackness to see how people might position themselves similarly or differently to the people who I meet at Afro Mermaid. So I was thinking about going for that reason, but then also I was connected to Morgana, who actually attended the last Afro Mermaid and was really, really, really cool. I think when you see someone on Netflix and you know that they're the founder of this huge mermaid convention and also the Circus Siren Pod, which is known to be one of the most kind of elite performing groups in the mermaid community. I think sometimes you just don't expect them to be so nice. Nice and welcoming and wonderful and encouraging and supportive, but she certainly is. And so she reached out to me about doing the sort of mermaid history or mermaid lore class at MerMagic-Con this year. So I was like, okay, well, now I have even multiple reasons to go. So I went to MerMagic-Con where I taught a class that I called Water Spirits Through Space and Time, talking about mermaid lore from around the world. So not primarily the African diasporic mermaid lore that I usually talk about. And I also had a vendor table for the Merwomanist podcast where I was collecting content for a vlog episode that I'm hoping to produce for the podcast and the YouTube channel. So I have officially started my YouTube channel, which is just right now under Mommy Melusine, my mermaid name. So I will link that in the show notes if you want to check it out. The channel will have my podcast episodes on it, but I also plan on creating some original content that is specifically for YouTube. So that will include vlogs, some of my mermaiding adventures, my research trips, as well as I'm thinking about incorporating content just around the career of being a professor, which are things that I may not necessarily share on the podcast because I don't know if people are interested who listen to the podcast. Also, I envision the channel as sort of just being about my research interests more broadly in terms of fantasy, horror, aquatic culture, other kinds of genre fiction, grad school, professor life, etc. We'll see. It's a very much a developing thing, but since I have been talking about books a lot on my podcast lately, I feel like YouTube is a better space to have conversations about books. And I'm going to be doing a lot more of that as I wrap up the research for my book project before I sort of come back to doing more mermaid interviews and that kind of thing. Okay, so that was a detour talking about my YouTube channel. Please check it out and support it and subscribe and like the videos. But getting back to MerMagic-Con, I had a table, a vendor table as well for collecting content for this vlog episode that I would like to do, as well as promote the podcast and get more people knowing about it, right? So I was able to pick up some subscribers and hopefully some listeners. And yeah, it was a great experience. One of the things I decided to do, I think a great episode to refer back to if you're listening to this one is the episode I put out last year about my recap of Afro Mermaid Summit and my recommendations for attending mermaid conventions. And one of my recommendations for attending mermaid conventions is to establish your priorities for what you want to get out of the convention. Know that you're not going to be able to do everything you want to do, and really, really focus on the things that you know you want to do and make sure that you're successful in that. So, there are a lot of reasons that people attend conventions. You attend conventions to see your friends, right? Your friends in that fan community. In our case, in the mermaid community, and we also have a lot of cosplayers and people in the fairy community also that will come out to mermaid conventions. You attend conventions to swim, hopefully, to swim in your mermaid tail in a space that you know will be welcoming of it, because there are a lot of places around the country and public pools where mermaid tails are not allowed, and everyone doesn't have access to a private pool where they could swim in either, right? Especially since, depending on what kind of weather it is, somewhere you live. In California, I've been able to swim all year, but a lot of people can't swim at all in the wintertime. So to swim, to get together in a place where you could actually be in your mermaid tail and not be that one weird kooky person everyone is looking at crazy in the public pool, which is definitely an experience I've had. Right. And just to be with other people who want to do what you're doing, learn tricks, right? But another reason a lot of mermaids go to conventions, and one of the things people spend a lot of time doing, is to get content, because a lot of mermaids, a significant portion of their business or the way that they market for their business is through social media and through posting mermaid content. It's, for me, I consider it to be a necessary evil. I do not have great feelings about social media. I think that it has really contributed to the struggles I've been having around my attention span and my focus over the last several years. I have a lot of worries and concerns about overexposing myself to the public, especially in this political environment. I have very mixed feelings in a mixed relationship, which is why I kind of drop off of social media for months at a time, because I just don't want to deal with it. However, it is a really important tool for anyone who is in a creative industry, especially a niche creative industry like mermaiding, because social media is how you find your people. All these friends that I have all across the country, people I look forward to seeing at these mermaid conventions, the way that I met them and the primarily way that I keep up with them and that we keep up with each other throughout the year until we see each other in person is through social media. So it's important for me. It's not an income or a revenue source. I'm not really going after brand deals or anything like that, but many mermaids are doing that kind of work. And it's really important for them to build up their follower accounts and to build up their brand visibility and recognition. And the thing that people like more than anything else is swimming videos. You could post all the quotes you want. I could post all the book covers I want. I could post all the pictures of me giving talks and doing mermaid research stuff. But people will always be in your comments. Where's your swimming pictures? Where's your underwater pictures, right? It's like street cred. So mermaids is water cred, right? Water credibility. You have to establish your water credibility. So another thing that's important if you have a mermaid business is to promote your business and get sales, right? And lots of mermaids also do jewelry, or they do art, or they're tail makers, right? And so you will also see people trying to do that as well. So that's a lot going on. So the advice that I've given before on this podcast is you have to identify probably your top two priorities, right? And that's where you have to put your energy and do the rest as you can, right? So for me, my top priorities were doing well, doing a good job on this class, which was a different than any lecture I've given before. Most of the time, I'm either talking about a broad history of mermaids, really mostly focused on Western mermaids, like the European traditions, even though those European traditions start in Africa, Mesopotamia. So I do go back to that. But I'm usually talking about that, or I'm talking specifically about African diasporic mermaids and even more very niche topics within African diasporic mermaids. So for this, it was requested that I kind of do more of a global coverage. And even though it's not that I don't know that material, that I'm not familiar with it, but I still was nervous about it because it's not something I've done in a public forum before. And for African diasporic mermaid lore, I am familiar enough. I'm not saying that I'm a religious studies expert, but I'm familiar enough with the religious context that Black mermaids tend to come out of, that I'm very, very confident talking about these deities and these figures. Where while I what might know other kind of mermaid figures like Nuai Blarong of Indonesia, or the Matsya avatar of Vishnu in Hinduism, who presents as kind of a merman, right? So while I might be familiar with these, the Mo'o of Hawaii, I- it's like I don't know the broader religious context as well. And it feels kind of weird to pull these like mermaid figures out without addressing and talking about the broader context, the broader spiritual context that they come out of, right? So it took me a while to figure out how to approach it so that I felt like I wasn't just listing examples, and I was kind of going into that a little bit, but also staying within the amount of time that I had. So I was really overthinking it a lot. But it ended up working out because it went very well. The room was full, almost every seat. I got a lot of interest, a lot of questions, a lot of applause. Morgana was really pleased. So it went really well. So I think the preparation paid off, but I did spend a lot of time preparing. I spent a lot of time preparing. So one thing that I wasn't able to prioritize the way that I usually do when I do any kind of travel is rest. I really never vacation. I never go away on a vacation. I always say if I'm traveling with my family, my husband and child, that's not a vacation. That's an experience, right? Because if I have to parent, then I'm not resting. It's an experience for our family. It's a beautiful experience, but it's not a vacation. And if I'm traveling for work, I'm working. And I really haven't had any travel that wasn't one or the other in probably the last 10 years of my life. I think the last time I took a trip that was really just for travel and for me, and that wasn't for research, and that wasn't a family trip, was probably Cuba, which I did that when my son was 3. I always think about my years in terms of his age rather than the actual year. So I think I did Cuba when he was 3 years old and now he's 9. So yeah, that's my last vacation. I know. Right. All that to say, I usually also try to get as much sleep as I can because I don't get a lot of sleep at home with a child that has a sleep disorder and is up throughout the night. So, yeah, this trip was not the trip that I was able to prioritize rest as much as everything else because I was prepping for that lecture and sometimes up late after a whole day at the convention where I was busy going to talks and running my table. So my top 2 priorities were doing a good job on this class and really doing a good job on really promoting the podcast as well as collecting content for the podcast. And especially for the latter, I had some help. And I think that's one of the reasons this convention went so well for me. My sister, Tiffany Aaliyah, she is my personal assistant for work, and she also is the editor of the podcast now, Tiffany Aaliyah Studios, if you're interested in checking her out. Very much a Jill of all trades, right? She's a professional dancer, but she also does content creation, influencing type of things. So she's just one of those people who, if you give her something to do, she'll figure out how to do it, right? So I took her along as an assistant. I paid her to come along as an assistant because another thing that she does is she does personal assistant work for entertainers, educators, and content creators. So she's done things like this before with tabling at conventions for people who work in the like area of anime and nerd culture, right? Fan culture. So she's familiar with these kind of spaces. So she was the one who was managing all of my tech, doing a lot of the filming, working the table, packing things up, setting things up, getting things printed for me so that I had the posters for my table and everything. And it was such a big help. It was such a big help. And now I'm trying to figure out how I can have that at pretty much every mermaid convention I go to, especially if I'm really planning on doing a lot of work activities at the convention, which is pretty much the case for at least the next year. So that was really helpful. So I'm trying to figure out how I can afford to continue to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons it just went so well. My table was really busy, considering the fact that I wasn't selling anything. It was really a pleasant surprise how many people were coming up to the table and how many people were interested. One of the things that I usually do when I table for Mer Womanist podcast is I have displays of different Black mermaid books. That is something that I'm rethinking, sort of removing as an element from the table, because when people see the books, they assume they're for sale and they want to buy them. And I mean, maybe that's something I could possibly do, but I really need to look into what are the legalities and logistics around that if I wanted to resell books for my own collection, as I do have multiple copies of a lot of these books. But I don't know if there's rules around that as a reseller, or if I would need to get some kind of reseller license or something. I have no idea. So that's something I would look into. But another idea that I got from thinking about that is having my own books, creating my own Black mermaid books. I do have an idea for a novella that I've been rolling over in my head for a long time. And I also could do something I would probably do a little bit more quickly, or children's books. Because, like, quite a few of the Black mermaid children's books in my collection are by white authors. And I still love the books. There's a lot of conversation in the book community right now about white authors writing books with Black characters. And while I agree with the criticism of how white authors are often enabled to do things that Black authors can't do about our own stories, as someone who is just a lover of books, I'm like, if the book is good, the book is good. If the book is good, I'm still going to read it and purchase it for my collection and promote it. Now, if the book isn't good, then I won't, right? So I think we could be critical of the structures in the publishing industry, which allows white authors to benefit from Black culture and Black stories while blocking Black authors from doing the same. And I think we could also still appreciate people's work, because I also feel like we have a lot of conversation about diverse representation. And while the best way to diversity is to empower diverse people to be able to tell their stories, I don't personally have a moral problem with white authors writing stories featuring and centering Black people if you do the proper research and you do it respectfully and well. I might have criticisms of it from an industry standpoint, from a structural institutional racism standpoint, but then those criticisms are not as much for the authors themselves, right? Anyway, I have noticed that quite a few of the Black Mermaid children's books in my collection are white authored, and that has inspired me to do some Black mermaid children's books of my own. And I also have an idea for a book involving dragons that I would like to do as well, because my son loves dragons and I would love to be able to produce something for him that has representation, that reflects him, and also has dragons in it. A lot of the books, my son has Down syndrome, which I've mentioned many times before, and a lot of the books that you find of children with Down syndrome in the book are about Down syndrome, or they're about disability. Like, oh, so and so is different, but great. And while that messaging is important, it's similar, I think, to the way that a lot of us feel about Black children's books that are all about, oh, my hair is beautiful, my skin is beautiful, or like about history or something. Like, that messaging is important. It's important for those books to exist. But Black children also like all the same stuff other kids do, and they want to see themselves represented in books that aren't necessarily just about being Black, right? Books with dragons and mermaids and wizards and witches and all of the stuff that white children can look at and see themselves on the covers of those kinds of books. So that's something that I'm thinking about. There is an organization that I'm a supporter of that I actually used to teach with and do fundraising for, Community Literature Initiative in Los Angeles, that has a picture book or a children's book writing program. So I am thinking about actually enrolling in that program so that I can do some children's books and I can have some mermaid books to actually sell at my table. Also, I could sell my own book. That was something that came up in conversation with a couple people I talked to at the table. A lot of authors were coming to introduce themselves to me and ask me to review their books. And I mentioned, "Oh yeah, I wrote a novel." And they're like, "Well, why isn't your novel here?" And I'm like, "Well, my novel it's a realist novel, it's not a fantasy novel." So it never occurred to me to include it with part of my platform as the Merwomanist podcast. And they're like, "That's your book. Why would you not sell it?" And my little sister has a poetry book that she sells at anime conventions. So I'm like, okay, well, why am I not selling my book? Why am I selling myself short? So I have a novel, Butterfly Jar, and I think I also will start taking that along with me. And I'll just let people know ain't no mermaids in it. No mermaids in it. There's a little bit, tiny bit of sort of a hoodoo spiritual element in there that I never was intended to be read as fantasy, because for a lot of Black folks, the spirit world and things happening without explanation are just real, right? But there's a little bit of an element there that might be considered speculative, but for the most part, it's just a realistic coming of age novel. But I do think that I will start taking it with me. So those are just some ideas I had. I had some great conversations. I'm really excited for how all of that content gets together once my assistant edits it. But one of the things I wasn't able, because I was really focused on the lecture and the podcast, I wasn't prioritizing swimming as much. I took my monofin, I took the tail, I took my stuff with me every day. And I'm like, if I have time towards the end of the day to go down to the pool and swim, I will, but I'm not going to stress it. So, yeah, I ended up actually being able to get in the water both days. And the MerMagic-Con is at a public recreational center with a aquatic center within it, and the pools are down on the lower level, and it's this huge, I don't know if it's Olympic size because I don't know what that is, but it's a very big pool that goes pretty deep. Maybe it was 12 feet at its deepest, so not super deep, but a lot of the lanes are pretty deep. And so the recreation center was actually open during the convention. The pool was open, right? There were other people there who weren't necessarily there for MerMagicCon, and there were certain lanes that were blocked off for MerMagicCon. And these lanes were lanes that went a little deeper. So I really wanted to swim on the first day because the Society of Fat Mermaids, founded by Mermaid Shay Monique, was having a group swim, and the lanes that were blocked off for it were like 6 to 8 feet, which I'm more comfortable in. So that's why I really wanted to get in the water the first day. But I didn't make it down there to the end of the day, and I only had about 30 minutes before the center closed. So I just kind of got in there, and then my lecture was going to be the next day. So I didn't really want to get my hair wet. So I had my swim cap on, my goggles. I didn't really have time to get comfortable, and I didn't really want to go too deep underwater because I was trying to keep my hair together. So I didn't really do much that day. I just kind of got in and tried to get acclimated. But the next day, once my lecture was over, I wanted to really swim. But if I wanted to swim, I was going to have to get in deeper water because the lanes that were blocked off for that day were 9 to 12 feet. So I hesitated for a long time because if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, I think that I do still get nervous in the water. And even though I go to these mermaid conventions, I typically just am not in the water as much with other mermaids because I get nervous and I get anxious and I get shy. Even though I'm swimming all the time at home, but I'm usually swimming in my home pool, which only goes to 5 feet. So, excuse the interruption. My husband and child arrived home, and I had to feed my son, and I have to get back to him. So, I just want to wrap this up real quick. So, as I said before, basically, I was gonna have to get in the deep end. I was gonna have to get in the deep end if I wanted to swim at MerMagicCon, because the way the pool area was, it's a huge pool area, and they have the pool that I think goes up to like 12, maybe 15 feet. And they also had a shallow pool that was like 4 feet.
and they have like a kids area. I thought about getting in that shallow pool, but I'm just like, nah. The only people in there were like parents who are with their kids. I'm just like, I can't go out like that. I'm gonna have to get in this pool if I want to swim. And I did hesitate, and it took a while for me to get in there, and it took a while for me to let go of the side and actually upright tread, which I didn't think I could do in a mermaid tail because it's kind of hard to practice that when you're 5'7" in a 5 foot pool, which is usually what I'm swimming in when I'm at home. I could actually upright tread and talk and have a conversation and hang out with the other mermaids, which I've actually never done before. And at first, I was just kind of swimming on the surface, but out of the water because I felt nervous to go too deep. But eventually, the more time I spent in the water, I felt more comfortable going deeper and just really swimming and having a good time. And so I'm really proud of myself. I'm glad that I hung in there and stayed in the water. I'm grateful for all the encouragement I got. Mermaid Z or Z Wolfie was in there. And Z Wolfie is one of my favorite mermaids because she's always so supportive and kind and encouraging. And I felt safe and I felt comfortable and I felt good about the people who were around me. If anything did happen or if I did freak out. And it was really my first time really being out there in the water, playing and talking and hanging out and swimming with the other mermaids. And yeah, I'm really proud of myself. I'm really glad to finally cross that barrier because that has been a block and a barrier for me. I'm going to link an episode in the show notes that talks about a near drowning experience I had as a child that is linked to a bullying incident. Basically, I was at a water park and some kids I was with lied to me about the depth of the pool, even though they knew I couldn't swim. So I ended up having to be saved by the lifeguard in front of everyone who was laughing at me. And I really do think that's like one of my formative experiences around water. And it has kind of like stuck in the back of my head or wherever your body stores trauma. And I think that the thing that I get scared about is not about drowning, because at this point, I do know that I know how to float on my back or tread or do whatever I have to do to get out of the water. I'm pretty confident that I won't drown, especially around a whole bunch of lifeguard certified mermaids, because I always do let people know before I get into the water that I get a little nervous, I get a little scared, look out for me. So it's like I know I won't drown, but I think I still do get self-conscious about needing to have people help me or just being embarrassed, right? I don't like to do things I don't consider myself to be great at in front of people. I get really self-conscious. I'm kind of used to being good at things and used to being capable, and I practice my skills until I'm ready for people to see them. But that's part of mermaiding, is mermaiding in community. You just can't, it's really not that fun to do it just by yourself. I mean, it's fun, but there's just something about it where it's really about finding the people who also do this and connecting with them. It's just part of the magic and the play of it all. And so it makes me feel really good to finally do that. And MerMagic-Con is the place where I finally crossed that line because it forced me to, right? Because this is how deep the pool is. If you want to swim, you're going to have to get in. So I had a great time, and now I'm really looking forward. I think I'm definitely going to probably go to California Mermaid Convention because it's about a 5 hour drive from where I am, and it's one I think I could take my husband and son to. I also really could take them to MerMagic-Con. It was actually very family friendly. There was a whole track of programming just for kids. There was a really great kids aquatic area in the pool area. It's just this cross country, so it's kind of expensive to take all of us. So I think I'll definitely take them up to California Mermaid Convention so my son could have a chance to see all of the mermaids in the pool. He loves when I swim with my mermaid tail in our pool at home. And so I know he'll just be so geeked out and have such a good time. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I went to the gala. The costumes were just incredible. There was a lot of food. That was a good time. I've always thought of MerMagic-Con as kind of the trade show for the pro mermaids because there's a lot of the higher level workshops and certifications and weight belt classes where you learn how to use the weight belts to go deeper under the water, underwater modeling, things like that. But there's also a lot of stuff to do if you are a beginning mermaid or amateur mermaid or just a mermaid aficionado. Like I said, I spent most of the convention out of the water because I was really focused on my class and my table. And the most of the things that I went to was just really kind of supporting other MERS I know. So going to the diversity panel and going to the Society of Fat Mermaids panel to support the friends of mine who are MERS. But next time I go, I definitely want to go to some more workshops. Potentially, maybe I'll be ready for the mermaid certification, the level 1, potentially. I definitely would like to do some more of those things that you have to kind of pre-register for and that are a little bit more serious. But for this year, I just really wanted to prioritize work. So, yeah, it's a wonderful convention. It was a great experience. Morgana was quite lovely. Everyone I met was just really welcoming, and I would say that overall, the vibe, it was actually way more relaxed than I expected. Very relaxed, very welcoming, very fun. A lot of people were really interested in what I was doing. I think I had a little bit of nervousness around promoting the podcast, which does focus on Black mermaid lore and fantasy lore, even though I talk about other things too. And also recruiting for the research study, where I'm really only looking to talk to Black mermaids about their experiences. And I think I was a little nervous being in a Black affinity space. I was a little bit nervous about maybe getting some weird reactions to that. And if anyone felt any kind of way, they didn't come up to me and say it. So everyone was really excited to see what I was doing and really interested. And I had some great conversations with people, and it was just fun. It was a really fun weekend. And I really hope I could put the coin together to go back next year. So that was my MerMagic-Con experience. And yeah, I had a great time, and I'd really recommend checking it out.
You have just listened to the Merwomanist podcast with Mommy Melusine. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, I would love 5 stars, and subscribe for future episodes. You can follow me on Instagram at mommy, that's MAMI, _ Melusine, or at Merwomanist Podcast, on LinkedIn at Jalandra Davis, or my website, jalandradavis.com. Wishing you love and laughter and hoping to see you swim this way again.